What's up, fantasy ballers? Hold onto your jerseys, because the Cowboys' backfield just turned into the wildest rodeo in Texas. Rico Dowdle's breakout, Zeke's surprise return, and Tony Pollard's dominance. It's a three-way dance that's got everyone spinning. But with the 49ers defense waiting to feast in Week 5, are any of these backs worth the risk? Saddle up, because we're about to lasso the truth and wrangle you some start/sit gold that could make or break your fantasy week. You can't afford to miss this. Hey there, Cowboys Nation. Welcome to Dallas Cowboys Fan, your ultimate destination for all things America's team. Whether you bleed blue and silver or are just starting to catch Cowboys fever, this is the place. Now, if you've been following the Cowboys this season, you know that their running game has been a bit of a roller coaster. With Tony Pollard firmly established as the lead back, most fantasy managers thought they had a set-it-and-forget-it bone. But as we've seen time and time again in the NFL, things can change in the blink of an eye. Enter Rico Dowdle and the return of Ezekiel Elliott. That's right, folks. Zeke is back in Dallas, and it's stirring up all kinds of questions. So let's break this down piece by piece and figure out what it means for your fantasy rosters. First up, let's talk about Rico Dowdle. This guy has been turning heads since the preseason, and he's finally getting his shot to shine in the regular season. In Week 4, against the Patriots, Dowdle saw significant playing time, carrying the ball 12 times for 54 yards, and even finding the end zone. That's the kind of performance that makes fantasy managers sit up and take notice. But here's where it gets interesting. The Cowboys just brought back their former workhorse, Ezekiel Elliott, on a one-year deal. Now, before you start panicking and benching Pollard, let's look at the facts. Zeke isn't the same back he was a few years ago, and the Cowboys have made it clear that Pollard is still their guy. But Elliott's presence adds another layer of complexity to this backfield. So, what does this mean for Week 5? Well, the Cowboys are facing off against the San Francisco 49ers, and let me tell you, this is not an easy matchup. The Niners' defense has been absolutely smothering opposing run games, allowing just 3.4 yards per carry through the first 4 weeks of the season. That's the kind of stat that makes running backs wake up in a cold sweat. Now you might be thinking, Jake, should I even consider starting any Cowboys running back this week? And that's a fair question. But remember, fantasy football is all about volume and opportunity. Tony Pollard is still going to get his touches, both on the ground and through the air. He's too talented and too integral to the Cowboys' offense to be completely shut down. But what about Dowdle and Elliott? This is where it gets tricky. Dowdle has shown flashes of potential, and the Cowboys seem to trust him in key situations. However, with Zeke now in the mix, we could see a reduction in Dowdle's workload. Elliott, on the other hand, is a wild card. He knows the system, he's got fresh legs, and he's got something to prove, but it's hard to imagine him stepping in and immediately taking on a significant role. Let's break down some numbers to give you a clearer picture. In the first 4 weeks of the season, Pollard has averaged 16.5 touches per game. Dowdle, meanwhile, has seen his workload increase, culminating in that 12-carry performance in Week 4. Now, with Elliott in the picture, we could see a situation where Pollard maintains his 15-18 touch range, while Dowdle and Elliott split the remaining work. But here's where it gets interesting. The 49ers have been vulnerable to pass-catching backs, allowing an average of 5 receptions per game to the position. This is where Pollard could really shine. His ability to make plays in the passing game could be the key to fantasy success this week. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Jake, what about the red zone? Who's going to get those valuable goal line carries? Great question, and it's one that's keeping fantasy managers up at night. Historically, this has been Zeke's domain. But remember, he's just rejoining the team. It's more likely that we'll see a mix of Pollard and Dowdle near the goal line, with Elliott potentially mixing in as he gets more acclimated to the offense. So, what's the verdict? If you've got Tony Pollard, you're starting him. Yes, the matchup is tough, but his involvement in the passing game gives him a solid floor. He's a low-end RB1 or high-end RB2 this week, depending on the size of your league. As for Rico Dowdle, he's a much riskier play. If you're in a deeper league or dealing with bye-week issues, he could be a flex option. But temper your expectations. The tough matchup and the uncertainty surrounding Elliott's role make Dowdle a boom or bust play. And what about Zeke? Look, I know it's tempting. He's a big name, and there's always that chance he turns back the clock and has a vintage performance. But for Week 5, he's nothing more than a speculative ad. Don't even think about starting him until we see how the Cowboys plan to use him. Now let's zoom out for a moment and talk about the bigger picture. This backfield situation in Dallas is going to be one to watch all season long. Pollard has proven he can handle a lead back role, but the addition of Elliott suggests that the Cowboys want to manage his workload. This could actually be good news for Pollard's long-term fantasy outlook, as it could help keep him fresh for the entire season. For Dowdle, this is a crucial time. He's shown flashes of potential, and how he performs in the coming weeks could determine his role, not just for this season, but for his future in Dallas. And as for Zeke, well, this is his chance to prove he's still got something left in the tank. A strong showing could lead to more opportunities, not just with the Cowboys, but potentially with other teams in the future. One thing to keep an eye on is how the Cowboys use these backs in different situations. Will we see Pollard and Elliott on the field together in some packages? Could Dowdle carve out a niche role, perhaps as a short yardage specialist? These are the kind of details that can make or break your fantasy season, so pay close attention to the usage patterns in Week 5. Another factor to consider is the Cowboys' overall offensive strategy. With Dak Prescott under center and weapons like CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks on the outside, Dallas has the potential to be an explosive passing offense. This could actually benefit the running backs, as defenses may be forced to play lighter boxes to defend against the pass. As we wrap up, let's recap our start/sit advice for Week 5. Tony Pollard, start him. He's still the lead back, and his receiving ability gives him a solid floor even in tough matchups. Rico Dowdle, flex option in deeper leagues, but be prepared for volatility. The tough matchup and uncertainty in the backfield make him a risky play. Ezekiel Elliott, bench him for now. Let's see how the Cowboys integrate him into the offense before considering him for fantasy lineups. Remember, fantasy football is a marathon, not a sprint. Don't overreact to 1 week's performance or a single personnel move. Stay patient, trust the process, and always be on the lookout for opportunities to improve your roster.